To millions, The Karate Kid was a simple story about discipline, balance, and an unlikely mentor. It made Ralph Macchio a star and earned Marita an Oscar nomination. But behind that calm, inspiring film was a production filled with tension, casting fights, and decisions that almost changed everything. And before his death, Pat Morita finally revealed the truth, something that makes the story behind the movie even more surprising than what made it on screen: the inspiration behind The Karate Kid. The story of Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi didn't start in a writer's room. It started with a real-life moment that caught a producer's attention. One day, Jerry Weintraub was watching television when he came across a news story about a teenager who had earned a black belt in karate just to defend himself against bullies. That idea stuck with him immediately. Not long after, Columbia Pictures brought in screenwriter Robert Mark Kamen to turn that spark into a full story. Even if people don't recognize Kamen's name, they've definitely seen his work. He went on to write major films like Lethal Weapon 3, The Fifth Element, and Taken. But when it came to The Karate Kid, he wasn't just writing from imagination, he was drawing from his own life. Kamen had trained in karate for 17 years, and that experience shaped everything from the tone of the story to the characters themselves. Mr. Miyagi, for example, was inspired by one of his real instructors, Meitoku Yagi, a quiet but deeply respected teacher from Okinawa. On the opposite side, the aggressive sensei John Kreese was built from a mix of real figures Kamen had encountered: tough, intimidating instructors who pushed their students to win at any cost. That contrast between discipline and aggression became the heart of the film. Even the title came together in a surprisingly simple way. Early on, the project was just called the Karate Kid Project. At some point, Kamen made a small but defining decision. He dropped the last word, casting Mr. Miyagi. Other than maybe Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mr. Miyagi stands as one of the greatest movie mentors ever. And it's hard to imagine The Karate Kid without Pat Morita in the role. His performance was so perfect, it earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. But casting Morita wasn't obvious at all. Before The Karate Kid, Morita was best known as a comedian, playing the lovable Arnold on Happy Days. So when director John G. Avildsen suggested him for Miyagi, producer Jerry Weintraub immediately dismissed the idea. He didn't want a comedic actor. He had someone else in mind: Toshiro Mifune, the legendary Japanese star of Yojimbo, Rashomon, and Seven Samurai. Avildsen, however, was convinced Morita was the right choice. To prove it, he recorded a script reading with Morita and slyly played the tape during a routine meeting with Weintraub. The producer was surprised, but instead of getting annoyed, he found himself impressed. Still, Weintraub insisted Morita audition 5 more times before committing. After passing the 5th and final audition, Weintraub admitted he'd nearly made the worst mistake of his life by overlooking him. Morita was officially cast, and the rest, as they say, is history. Casting Daniel and Johnny. Believe it or not, Ralph Macchio was 22 years old when he stepped into the role of the teenage Daniel LaRusso, but you'd never guess it from his performance. Fresh off The Outsiders, Macchio already had some momentum, but it wasn't just his experience that landed him the part. It was his attitude. When screenwriter Robert Mark Kamen met Macchio to see if he fit the role, he walked away calling the young actor obnoxious. And that was exactly what Kamen and director John G. Avildsen were looking for: someone with grit, someone who wouldn't take crap from anyone, just like Daniel himself. Macchio fit the character so well that they even rewrote part of the script for him. Originally, the character's last name was Weber, but since Macchio was Italian, they changed it to LaRusso. Then there was William Zabka, who became the iconic bully Johnny Lawrence. Zabka took method acting to the extreme during auditions, even grabbing Avildsen by the shirt to prove his intensity. It wasn't the safest move, but it worked. He was called back multiple times. On one audition, he got a little too carried away with his martial arts moves and actually kicked a hole in the wall. Still, it all worked out. Zabka landed the part and became the unforgettable captain of Cobra Kai, creating one of the most iconic villains of the 1980s. Between Macchio's perfect mix of charm and defiance and Zabka's raw intensity, the casting of the Karate Kid set the stage for a film that would become legendary, busting the Chuck Norris myth. While Johnny Lawrence is the bad guy we love to hate, John Kreese is the true villain of the Karate Kid, a Vietnam vet who believes in striking first, striking hard, and showing no mercy. Kreese even assaults his own students, making him the quintessential martial arts monster. Martin Kove's menacing performance brought the character to life perfectly, but fans have long wondered, what if Chuck Norris had played Kreese? The truth? According to Brian Cronin at CBR.com, the idea that Norris was offered the role is just a myth. He was never actually asked to play Kreese, but even if he had been, Norris says he would have turned it down. Why? Because he felt the character painted karate in a negative light. And considering Norris's real-life credentials, that makes sense. Norris isn't just a pop culture icon, he's a legitimate martial artist. In the 70s, he ran multiple dojos and held the World Professional Middleweight Karate Championship for 6 years, undefeated. A role like Kreese, he felt, could misrepresent the discipline and respect central to the sport. So while it's fun to imagine Walker, Texas Ranger, taking on the part, in the end, Martin Kove was the perfect choice. He could deliver the sinister presence and dialogue that made Kreese unforgettable, while Norris, well, he's much better throwing kicks than delivering lines. The man behind the martial arts. When Ralph Macchio and the rest of the cast signed on for the Karate Kid, none of them had much real experience with martial arts. William Zabka had wrestled in high school, sure, but wrestling moves don't exactly translate to roundhouse kicks. To get everyone ready for the film's iconic karate tournament, the production brought in Pat E. Johnson. Johnson had studied Tang Soo Do while serving in Korea, later worked with Chuck Norris at one of his schools, and built an impressive fight record. He even worked with stars like Brandon Lee, Jackie Chan, and had a role in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. Johnson's credentials made him the perfect fight choreographer, and he got creative teaching the cast. For instance, he paired Macchio and Marita during training so they would share their aches and pains like two little old men, building camaraderie while learning. Their lessons were relaxed and calm, mirroring the patient, methodical style of Mr. Miyagi. The approach for the Cobra Kai students was entirely different. Johnson put Zabka and the others through a boot camp-style regimen, push-ups, intense drills, and strict discipline. To make Martin Kove, who played John Kreese, seem like a true black belt to the rest of the cast, Johnson trained him separately. When Kove finally joined the group, the actors treated him with the respect due to a real sensei, enhancing the authenticity of the on-screen dynamic. Johnson's work wasn't limited to behind-the-scenes coaching either. If you watch the tournament scenes closely, you'll spot him on screen playing the mustachioed referee, adding another layer to his lasting contribution to the film. His blend of creativity, discipline, and hands-on involvement helped make the martial arts in the Karate Kid feel real and unforgettable. The man who was Miyagi. While Pat Marita delivered plenty of memorable punches as Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid, he couldn't perform every stunt the script demanded. When Miyagi had to pull off something wild, like leaping over a chain-link fence to teach karate to bullies dressed as skeletons, a real martial artist stepped in, Fumio Demura. Born in Japan, Demura was a master of karate and kabuto, weapon-based martial arts. After winning the All-Japan Karate Championship, he set out for America with just $300. Life was tough at first. He even slept in a garage. But his talent quickly opened doors. Demura started teaching his own schools and giving karate demonstrations at places like Knott's Berry Farm and the now-defunct Japanese Village and Deer Park. His reputation grew fast. Demura appeared on the cover of Black Belt magazine, performed in Las Vegas and Paris, and even helped Bruce Lee master the nunchaku. He became friends with Chuck Norris, who reportedly recommended him for the role of Miyagi. Demura declined the acting part because of his limited English, but he accepted the role of Marita's stunt double, performing in all three of the original films. While Demura is the most famous stunt double in the series, Darryl Vidal also deserves recognition. Vidal not only played one of the semi-finalists in the tournament, but doubled for Marita in the iconic beach scene, where Miyagi executes the crane kick. Without these talented martial artists behind the camera, some of the film's most unforgettable moments might never have come to life. The story behind You're the Best. The 1980s were packed with motivational anthems, but few captured the spirit of triumph like You're the Best, sung by Joe Esposito. This high-energy track powers the montage of the Karate Kid tournament as Daniel LaRusso punches and kicks his way toward the climactic showdown with Johnny Lawrence. It's epic, over-the-top, and unforgettable. But believe it or not, it almost didn't happen that way. Originally, Esposito recorded You're the Best for Rocky III, but Sylvester Stallone opted for Survivor's iconic Eye of the Tiger instead. Luckily for movie fans, director John G. Avildsen loved the song and found a perfect home for it in The Karate Kid. Lines like, "Never doubt that you're the one and you can have your dreams," would have felt out of place in Stallone's film. But in Daniel's journey, they became legendary. Fun fact, Survivor even contributed to The Karate Kid with their song The Moment of Truth playing over the credits. In a way, Rocky's loss became our gain, and You're the Best is a huge reason the song and Joe Esposito remain unforgettable decades later. For Esposito, being part of such an iconic moment still holds special meaning. As he told Pop Dose, "I'm thrilled to have been a part of it. It gives me a little something back for all the years I put in. Don't forget, I'm in Vegas, singing in lounges, and sometimes it's a little discouraging. But when someone remembers what I've done from a movie, it makes me feel pretty good." Pat Morita's World War II experience. When most people think of the Karate Kid, they picture Daniel's unusual training routines or the climactic fight with Johnny. But some of the quieter moments hit just as hard. One especially moving scene shows a drunken Mr. Miyagi in a soldier's uniform, singing a mournful song. Daniel soon learns that Miyagi served in World War II, yet his pregnant wife was sent to an internment camp, where she tragically died during childbirth. That heartbreaking moment wasn't just fiction, it was deeply influenced by Pat Morita's own life. As a child, Marita spent much of his early years in a sanitarium, battling spinal tuberculosis and wearing a full body cast for years. By age 11, he had recovered, but shortly after, he and his family were forcibly relocated to a Japanese-American internment camp. Though reunited with his parents, Marita was confined behind barbed wire for nearly 2 years, a prisoner of circumstance despite having done nothing wrong. When it came time to bring Miyagi's backstory to life on screen, Marita drew directly from these experiences. According to writer Charles C. Gooden, the song Miyagi sings in the scene is one Marita had actually heard while imprisoned. His insight and personal connection gave the moment incredible emotional weight. Even so, the studio initially wanted to cut the scene. Marita, along with director John G. Avildsen, fought to keep it, believing in its importance. Avildsen later credited that very scene as a key reason Marita earned his Academy Award nomination, proving that sometimes the quietest moments carry the greatest power. The Karate Kid lawsuit. It seems like every big blockbuster eventually faces a courtroom drama, and The Karate Kid was no exception. Trouble began when a karate instructor named Bill DeClemente sued, claiming the film had stolen his nickname. DeClemente had been using The Karate Kid since the 1960s. He put it on business cards, signed promotion certificates with it whenever his students earned a new belt, and even named his school the Karate Kid Dojo. So when the movie hit theaters, he assumed screenwriter Robert Mark Kamen had lifted the name straight from him. But the court didn't see it that way. Only a handful of people had ever known De Clemente by that nickname, so it was ruled too obscure to claim ownership. In the end, his lawsuit was dismissed, effectively crane-kicked right out of court. The summer of 1984. When The Karate Kid hit theaters on June 22, 1984, it didn't just arrive, it exploded. Ralph Macchio's underdog story pulled in just over $90 million domestically, making it the fifth highest-grossing film of the year, and critics loved it. But 1984 wasn't just a win for Daniel LaRusso. It was one of the most unforgettable summers in Hollywood history. That June alone brought audiences Gremlins, Ghostbusters, and Once Upon a Time in America. By July, fans were watching The Never-Ending Story, Purple Rain, and Revenge of the Nerds. And don't forget May, when theaters were showing 16 Candles, The Natural, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Add in Red Dawn, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, The Last Starfighter, Streets of Fire, and The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the eighth dimension, and you start to see just how stacked that summer was. Step back and look at the entire year, and it gets even crazier. Nightmare on Elm Street, Footloose, The Terminator, Beverly Hills Cop, Amadeus, This Is Spinal Tap, and Repo Man all debuted. Even the Coen brothers made their feature debut with the Texas noir Blood Simple. In short, 1984 wasn't just a good year for movies, it was legendary. And in the middle of all that cinematic magic was a little scrappy film about a scrawny kid who learned karate by sanding floors and painting fences, a movie that became a cultural touchstone and helped cement 1984 as one of Hollywood's greatest years. Breaking out of a sitcom box. The idea that Pat Morita almost didn't play Mr. Miyagi seems unbelievable today, but it's true. Producer Jerry Weintraub couldn't see past Morita's previous role as Arnold on Happy Days. To him, Morita was a comedian, not a martial arts mentor. Weintraub flat out refused to let him audition. Director John G. Avildsen disagreed, though. Secretly, he recorded Morita's audition and ambushed Weintraub during a production meeting, slipping the tape into the middle of a conversation. Weintraub was impressed but still stubborn. He made Morita audition 5 more times before finally admitting he'd almost made the worst mistake of his career. Interestingly, the producers had also considered Fumio Demura, the martial arts master who would eventually serve as Morita's stunt double. A Shito Ryu champion who even trained Bruce Lee in nunchaku, Demura had the skills to demolish Cobra Kai with ease. But while Demura brought the moves, Morita brought the heart, charm, and depth that made Miyagi unforgettable. Together, Morita and Demura helped create one of cinema's most beloved characters. Morita went on to earn an Oscar nomination, a remarkable feat for a man who, not long before, had been serving burgers on a sitcom.